good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are. My name is Charlene Margot, and I am founder of the Parent Education Series, now in its 18th year, and now nonprofit, the Parent Venture co-founder. My co-founder, Bev Hartman, is with us today, as is today's keynote presenter, as always, our friend, Dr. Eran Magen. Today's topic, how to talk with your kids about violence and war, obviously could not be more timely. Eran will tell you a little bit more about why he is a really important person to be able to talk about this topic. But again, we're just glad that you're here. We thought long and hard about whether to offer this presentation and then decided that this is what we do. We try to educate parents and give them tools and strategies so that they can better communicate with your kids, especially in the parent forums. Communication is always our goal, and that's where Eran's expertise comes in. Please join me, everybody, in a really warm welcome for Dr. Eran Magen. Take it away, Eran.
Yay, I'm taking it away. Thank you, Charlene. Hello, everybody. Nice to see some of you. The recording, by the way, is only for people whose voices are being heard, you know, where Zoom is looking. And so if you want to turn on your cameras, your video is not going to actually get recorded. And we will stop before we switch to the discussion. Video is nice just because, you know, it's nice to feel like a community in general, especially at a time like this and a topic like this. And also it helps me know if people are falling asleep, if I should be going faster or slower or what. So if you're up for it, do it. If not, that's okay. Let me share my screen. Here we are. So today I'll talk for a bit, and then hopefully we'll all talk together about how to talk with our kids about violence and war. Why we'd want to do it, why would we maybe not want to do it, and if we do, then how to do it in a way that's most helpful for them. As Charlene was saying, if you have questions, just put them in the chat, and then we'll get to them at the end. We'll go through them. As usual, I want to start off by saying kudos to you for making time and just showing up and thinking about this and not just having this happen kind of along the way. It's very easy to improvise parenting, and most of parenting really is improvising. But it's nice that you're taking, it's commendable that you're taking time to take a break and think about this and strategize. So good for you, good for your kids. So the first question is, why even talk to your kids about any of the terrible stuff that might be going on if it's not immediately relevant to them? And this is my probably favorite bumper sticker I ever came across. I could only find a photo of the magnet. If you don't talk to your cat about catnip, who will? And this applies to a lot of things, right? If you're the first person to talk to your kid about them, then you're starting to shape some kind of a mold. You're giving them some kind of a container for whatever the topic is. Excuse me, I'm at the end of a cold. So if this is a topic that they're going to encounter elsewhere, and especially if this is a difficult topic, it might be good for you to be giving them some framework and maybe some tools to handle material coming their way. And also if this is relevant for them, right? If this is either actually happening to them or around them, or if it's happening to people they know, then of course it's important for you to be able to talk about this with them. Before going into the how exactly, I want to just briefly talk about a really important concept that underlies a lot of what I'm going to be talking about here, which is the idea of trauma and where trauma comes from and how do we make sure not to accidentally traumatize people around us. So a common definition of trauma, psychological trauma, is that trauma is something that happens when something that is overwhelmingly terrible happens to somebody that we care about very much, either ourselves or somebody else, and we have no power to stop it. Even when all of these things, even when all of these things are true, it doesn't necessarily mean that people will develop post-traumatic stress disorder, but the event itself, we can count it as trauma. And maybe the most important feature of a traumatic event that can then develop into some kind of a stress, an extreme stress response, whether or not we'll call it a disorder, is the sense that we don't have the power to stop this bad thing that's happening. Right? If you just change this one part, if you take out the powerless, you don't really end up with trauma. And in psychological parlance, we call that agency. I know other people call that agency too. I don't mean to say that we own the word, but we refer to this as a sense of agency. So when something is happening and something bad happens and I have zero sense of agency, there's a good chance that it'll be deeply disturbing for me. And on the flip side, if we do have a sense of agency, and if we're able to add a sense of agency even to bad things that are happening, we're providing an antidote to trauma. And so when we talk with people, especially kids, about really terrible things, we want to make sure that they, even in discussing it, they have a sense of agency. They get to decide whether or not to talk about it and how much and so on. And also, we want to encourage in them a sense that they have something they can do about what's going on, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot more, because sometimes things are really large scale and we don't have a lot that we can do, but kids come up with all kinds of creative solutions. And even encouraging that sense that they have, even if it's an illusion, encouraging that sense that there's something they can do to help is enormously helpful. So just kind of tuck this away in the back of your mind, this idea of trauma and agency, because I'll keep touching back on it. So the big question, of course, is whether or not we want to be sharing with our kids. And unfortunately here, we're not talking about anything delicious or fun. We're talking about sometimes really sad or upsetting news or stories or things that are actually happening near or far to people we know, to people we care about. And it's kind of a cost-benefit calculation to my mind. And it's not obvious to me that we'll want to share everything bad that we know about with our kids. Really, it needs to cross a pretty high threshold, in my opinion. This depends also, of course, on the age of the kids and on how resilient you judge them to be. But in general, I would not just assume that automatically everything needs to be shared, just like we don't share every problem in our lives with them in general as they're growing up. So I'll be going today over the why, when, where, how, and what to talk about with kids with respect to war and violence. So starting with the why, and excuse me, it's quite possible that you'll end up saying, nope, I don't need to talk to my kid about this, which is great. If that's your judgment, that's a perfectly valid solution. So the first question is there a benefit to this? And then does the benefit outweigh the potential cost? Possible benefits. One is that it prevents your kid from being surprised later on if somebody else starts talking to them about this and they just have no clue that this is happening. The news might be much more shocking when it happens in this way from somebody who's maybe less careful or mindful than you. The kid might even be upset with you for not sharing the news if it's something that's truly relevant. So these are all good reasons. Another good reason is that your kid might be getting news or opinions from a lot of different directions. And some of those might be really different from yours or what you believe to be true or what your kid, what you would like your kid to consider neutrally or not neutrally, right? If somebody tells your kids, oh, this terrible thing is happening because of this or because of that, this might leave a really strong mark on your child if you didn't have a conversation with your child beforehand and start explaining things at least your way. You know, we're not always right, but it's nice to hold the same opinion. It's nice for the kids to hold opinions that are similar to us about things that are this big. And so this gives you an opportunity to sort of run interference there and provide this kind of a mold for how they'll think about it. The possible costs, of course, are that if you're talking about upsetting things with your kid might get upset. And your kid might get really upset, depending on how you share it and what it is you share and how relevant it is for your. So in a sense, the rest of what I'm going to say now is about how to mitigate these costs if you've decided that the benefits are important. So we're assuming here that you sat with yourself or you talked with somebody else and you decided, yes, this is important to share with my kid. It's worth it. So some considerations. When to do it. I would strongly suggest doing it during the daytime when your kid is awake and fully functioning, when it's light out and less scary, when you have enough time to talk and it doesn't have to be rushed. And ideally, for the ninja move, before something fun. So there's an opportunity to recover emotionally right after that. So this can absolutely be a planned conversation that you have in your head in terms of when you'll be introducing this. This may be only the first conversation about this, and obviously things are ongoing. And so there might be other times that you talk about the same event or other similar events. And if this happens, I still think that these three are a great time to do it. And if your kid wants to talk about something, it is important to talk about it, but only if you think that it's a good time to do it. If your kid, right before going to bed is asking questions that might lead to some or require some serious conversations, it's totally fair to say, that's a great question. Let's talk about this tomorrow morning on the way to school or whenever, right? So you can still move it toward a time that's right. But if your kid is asking you a question during a time that is reasonable to talk about it, why not? So that's the when and a little bit about the where. In terms of the how, kids, and especially young kids, orient much more to the emotional content of what we're saying than the actual factual content of what we're saying. In a sense, when they're young enough, it's a little bit like their vision is very fuzzy and they only see the big emotional colors around whatever's happening. I think that oftentimes my impression is that their perception in real time of what's happening in front of them is very similar to the way that you might remember a movie that you saw some time ago. And you don't remember all the details, but you remember how it made you feel, the general sense around it. And this is what they're going to be looking for. Again, this is for younger kids. This is what they're going to be looking for, and this is what they're going to be picking up from you. So as you're communicating with them, it's very important to be mindful of the emotional tone that you're conveying and to convey a sense of groundedness and a sense of security, even in how you're talking about things, right? To say, we're safe, we're totally fine, will send exactly the opposite message to your kid. And obviously you're not going to do exactly that, but to have this kind of agitation as you're talking about it, if possible, try to ground yourself, try to stay connected to your kid, try to appear calm, confident. Ideally, you might be angry about something, you might be sad about something. All these are legitimate emotions to have and even to show, but you just want to be mindful of how much of this you're putting onto your child. And then also, very importantly, follow your kid's lead. So as you start talking, you might notice your kid doing things that really say your kid is done, doesn't want to hear any more of it. And kids are actually very good at showing us when they're done because they're not even trying to be polite about it. So look for things like agitation. If you see your kid like getting increasingly upset or kind of fidgety or looking around for other things, or if your kid changes the topic, you talk about this thing that is happening and then your kid says all of a sudden, what is watermelon made of? Or whatever, your kid comes up with at the moment. That topic change is a way your child is saying, I'm done talking about this now. It's not just your child being flaky and distracted. So pay close attention if your child is changing the topic, follow that lead. And if it feels really important to you to keep talking about the thing that you're talking about, and if you're worried that if you're thinking your kid might be actually just distracted, you can ask. If you say blah, 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 and this thing is happening, and then these people came, and then these people did this, and then your kid says, what's a watermelon made of? You can say, do you prefer that we talk about something other than what I was just saying? Would that be better? And then your kid will very likely say, yeah, right? So if you need to check. But in general, when kids change topics, it's because they're done talking about the thing that they're talking about. And sometimes kids will very explicitly say, can we stop talking about this? And I strongly recommend honoring that request, even if you feel like not all the information is out, even if there's more you want to give. You want to avoid flooding them, and you want to also give them a sense of agency in the way that they're receiving the information, right? So you're not forcing the information on them. Okay, and in terms of the content, a good way to start at any point, whether it's your first conversation about this or subsequent conversations, kind of update conversations, is to ask, what do you know? What do you remember? And just get a sense of what's happening in your kid's head. And then share whatever relevant details. I would say aim to share the minimum amount of details that's necessary for them to just have an understanding of the situation. Keep it age appropriate. Most kids don't need gore and don't deal well with it. You can describe kind of in more abstract terms the bad things that are happening. You can say people died. You can say people got injured, right? But you don't need to get into the nitty gritty of it unless you feel like it's important for you to do that with your kid. But in general, I think that increases the likelihood that your kid will not want to engage with the topic in the future. Throughout, it's a very good idea to remind your kid repeatedly that your kid is safe, to the extent that that's true. Because for kids, I mean, for us as well, when we're stressed enough, but especially for kids, it's sometimes hard to separate the story, even if it's a story about something far away, from the reality of me right now. And if I'm imagining people coming and attacking people, I can very easily imagine it happened to me. And I might go to bed thinking about this, or I might go home and it's dark and I'm not sure. And so this constant reassurance that they are safe, that this is not here, is very, very important for kids. Things that may seem obvious to you are just not obvious. The constant reminder is important. As you share the details, I think it's also helpful to talk about the people that are doing good in that situation, right? The people that are helping in whatever way are helping. There are many different ways to help in times of conflict and war, and it's good to highlight those, to give kids also a sense of hope and a sense of agency for humankind, right? To say we don't all have to get sucked into this and be victims when this happens. There are things we can do. We can change the situation for the better. People can change the situation for the better, and some people choose to. I think it's a good idea to model compassion as we're talking about whatever is happening. Kids, of course, are notoriously black and white thinkers. It's very easy to take sides, dig into them really hard, and just want the other side completely ignored. And I think this is a really special opportunity to remind kids that everybody is people, and that everybody feels things, and everybody has families. You're planting a very important seed here. This is a very important moment, and you're modeling the ability to show compassion to any extent that you're able to recruit. You're modeling the ability to hold on to and show compassion, even as you're talking about horrible things that are happening and horrible things that people are doing. You can ask them if they have any questions. I think it's a good idea. You don't have to answer each and every question that they pose. Use your judgment, and you can say things like, I don't know, or you can say things like, I don't think that's important, or you could say things like, I think that's just like too scary to talk about, honestly, but here's the bottom line, and then explain what's happening. But many of their questions will be relevant, and you will want to answer them, and again, gives them a sense of agency in exploring the story. Kids will sometimes suggest solutions to situations, and sometimes they'll suggest really horrible solutions that will clearly not work in any version of reality. But it makes them feel better to feel like they can control the situation, or even that they might hypothetically control the situation if they were there. Oh, if this happened to me, I would hide behind the flower, or something like that, right? It's tempting, especially if we're agitated about whatever it is we're talking about. It's tempting to kind of connect them to reality and explain immediately how that's not going to work. But I encourage you to do the opposite. I encourage you to lean into their fantasy, because the goal is to help them around this particular topic develop a sense of safety. They're not going to believe this forever. But at least in the moment of first hearing about what's happening, it's good for them to have a sense of personal safety. And then at the end, just check in, ask, how are you feeling? How was it to listen to all this? And you might get very minimal responses. Fine, it's okay, I don't know, sounds sad, right? But just, again, give them an opportunity to express whatever they have, and offer to talk more if they want, right? So just keep the door open. Okay, so these are a bunch of considerations, the why, when, where, how, what for talking with kids. And then I also wanted to suggest a couple of things about kind of life beyond the conversation. Just at times that might be very tense or very scary for a lot of people in the household. So there are a few considerations that I want to suggest, ways that you can, for your kids, be safe and be patient, be empowering, and be a role model. I'll go into a little bit of detail for each of those. You can create a lot of safety for your kids by just being there, prioritizing spending time with them, physically around them, physically with them, offering comfort, the comfort of your presence, the comfort of, whatever nice food you like to make or eat together. This is really significant to help them feel connected to you, like you're there and you're present and you care. Limiting exposure in general in the house, right? Not having the TV on 24/7, or not, constantly be looking at social media about whatever's happening and then discussing it loudly and heatedly with other people. Give quiet time. Let the home be a quiet space if at all possible, right? Make the connection to the topic, the external connection, and the constant input of information about whatever is happening, make that the exception rather than the rule, so that they can maintain their routine and it's not constantly bombarding them, right? And you can have specific times for updates, for catch up, for discussing. If you need to talk about stuff that's going on, maybe you take your phone and you go to the other side of the house, or you go outside, but let them maintain a routine as much as possible. It's not going to make them any less interested in what's happening, but it's going to help them stay healthy as they're going through it. You can empower them in a bunch of different small ways. Many of them end up being very cute, some of them being actually helpful to you as well. So ask them to help you with different things. It doesn't need to have anything to do with what current conflict or war or violence you're talking about with them, right? Just help them remember that they're really capable. Ask them to help with this or with that, and then comment on how well they did it, how big they are, how fast they are, what good judgment they have, whatever it is. Just give them opportunities to feel powerful. If they're suggesting things, even for around the house, as much as you can, accept them, right? If they're saying, oh, maybe we should wash the spoons first and then the plates, great idea, let's do that, right? It can be really silly things. But as much as you can, accept their suggestions. Let them feel like they're competent and and like they have agency. They get to call some shots. I mentioned before this idea of accepting solutions, and then kind of air quote solutions to the actual trouble in the world that is happening, or if something happened near or so on. That can happen in the course of daily conversations. They might be thinking about it and coming up with solutions. By and large, I'd encourage you to accept it, unless you feel that a deeper discussion would be helpful, or that it wouldn't be distressing for them and they're able to work with you toward like an actually better solution. And then lastly, for this idea of empowerment, at times of risk for trauma, I would say, right? When there's a big war going on, when there was a mass violence event near us, things like that, a lot of people feel this great impulse to do something, just to feel like they're helping somehow. And people do all kinds of stuff, some of it helpful, some of it not particularly helpful to other people, but it helps them feel like they're doing something. And that's a very healthy human instinct. That is essentially your psychological immune system mounting a response to trauma, or to the threat of trauma. And so same goes with your kids. Ask them if they want to do something. Maybe they want to draw a drawing and put it outside. Maybe they want to write a letter to somebody that you can send. Whatever it is, maybe they want to send some of their allowance. But to do something, whether or not it's actually helping somebody in the end is hard to know, honestly, for most of what we do. But to help them feel like they're doing something will help them feel active and not powerless in the face of whatever's happening, which is key to passing through it more or less healthy. And then lastly, just remember to be patient. Sorry, that's not lastly. It's almost lastly. Lastly, with respect to kid facing, remember to be patient. So if there's something very stressful going on, if there's stress in the household floating around, everybody's going to be handling stress more poorly than before, the grown-ups and the kids. You may see the kids doing things that they haven't done in a while, right? If somebody, really young kids that just came out of diaper may suddenly start having accidents. Older kids may start having accidents. They might start crying in weird times or in weird ways. They might start talking like little kids. Their conflict resolution skills might become really poor. Most of those things are also quite likely going to be true of the adults in the household, right? We're all just going to regress back to some stress handling mechanism that is really basic and easy for us to do, not always the most productive. So be patient. Be patient with them, be patient with yourselves. Remember that it's going to pass. It's a stage of anxiety. It's a stage of processing something bad that is happening, and everybody's going to rebound back to where they were, right? But don't react with harshness to it. They're doing the best they can. Everybody's doing the best they can right now, right? And this is a manifestation of the anxiety, of the stress that is going on. And then remember to take care of yourself and to show your kid what's a good way to handle this kind of stress. So all of the basics apply: sleep, eat, exercise, talk to other people, have positive relationships, try to keep a clear, kind of clean mental space. Limit your own news consumption. I would strongly encourage you to do the same. News like to repeat. When they don't have anything new to do, they just show the most shocking stuff again and again. It's just not helpful, in my opinion. It saps our energy. It makes us less likely to be able to actually contribute in any way. So limit your own news consumption too. Be patient with yourself in the same way that I'm hoping you'll be patient with your kid. Give yourself what you need, right? Little kids might need to sleep with the lights on when they're scared, but I know grownups that have been needing to sleep with the lights on recently because they're just scared. And it's just kind of a natural reaction. And it's okay. Give that to yourself. Treat yourself the way that you would want your child treated, because the part of you that is afraid is not a grown-up rational part necessarily, right? So you can give yourself all those same things. You want, a little more cake, have a little more cake. You want to sleep with the lights on, sleep with the lights on. You want to spend more time playing, if you can afford to, spend more time playing. You want to cuddle. Do what you need to feel better. Be good to yourself. And then, of course, if things feel like they're starting to slide a little too far for you or for your kids, seek help. Right? Don't let it go too far. It doesn't need to. There's lots of people that want to help, lots of people that can help. In the school, you have the school counselor, teacher. They can refer on to other resources as well. There's no need for people to be upset kind of in an ongoing basis or stressed in an ongoing basis. And you can still be quite effective, even if you want to be doing something that is helping other people. You can be quite effective doing it, even if you're not super stressed and super anxious. It's not helping anyone if you or if your child are very upset on a frequent basis. So seek help if you need it. I think those are it. Yep, that's it. So just close with a short plug. So all of the stuff that I do is also on the website, parentingforhumans.com. If you want to go check it out, you're very welcome to join the mailing list, and then you'll hear about other workshops similar to this and different than this that I do. We're running parenting groups for parents that want to, again, come together and just kind of think about parenting and talk with other parents about how to parent rather than just let it all zoom by.